Everyone wants me to read Pun Pun, and apparently it's pretty like intense. But I think it should be fine. I'm gonna start it. I'm gonna start it. You know what? I'll start it. Why not? It's probably all hype, right? It should be fine. Hey guys, so yeah, I don't know. I just feel a bit different today. I just feel like I don't know. Something's changed, I guess. Something feels different. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Goodnight Pun Pun was a manga that I knew about long before I even started reading manga. I knew of the iconic image of Pun Pun Onodera, and I knew of the reputation that the manga had as a whole. I can't remember when I first heard the premise, but I was very much intrigued. I liked things that kind of push the boundary of reality, and Pun Pun is one of the things that mixes the natural with the unnatural while retaining this sense of wondership that one would have as a child and losing it over time as you become an adult. Oyasumi Pun Pun, or Goodnight Pun Pun, was created and illustrated by Inio Asano. And Inio Asano had always had a reputation for creating very dramatic human stories within manga. Despite manga having the ability to take you to worlds unknown before, create characters that are so ludicrous and outlandish, while relatable at the same time, Inio Asano decides to create characters that feel like we would know them as if they were the people living down the street, as if they were the people we'd walk by in a metropolitan city, if they were the people that we'd see once and then never see again. And that is one of the things that Goodnight Pun Pun does. I could easily talk about the story of what is Pun Pun, and I'll give a synopsis because I imagine there are people who probably have never read it. But Goodnight Pun Pun is a coming-of-age story about the main character, Pun Pun Onodera. And Onodera sees himself as this small little bird. You, as the reader, see him this way. But to the rest of the world, they are drawn as humans, and they see him as a human being. But for some reason, he sees himself as this, and he sees his relatives the same way. We first meet Pun Pun in elementary school with his friends. He meets the first girl he has a crush on. We see him slowly grow as a human being, and like most coming of age stories, we see the large moments that you remember in your life happening. Maybe your first kiss, your first crush, first time dealing with family problems, school problems, odd social situations, losing friends, moving. There is so much that Pun Pun encapsulates, not only just of the coming of age of a young boy, but human beings as a whole, because we don't just follow Pun Pun. One of the other main characters we follow is his uncle, Yuichi Onodera, who embodies the age group of being in your 20s and not knowing what it is that you want to do with your life yet. Being someone who is there just to take care of someone while slowly growing and figuring out what your work is, what your job is, who you are and what you want to be, while dealing with who you were as a person. There is always someone in Pun Pun that you as a reader can look at and see as, I understand that character. I sympathize with that character, I don't. But one of the things that Pun Pun really does well at is engaging you with the problem of real life. What I love that manga does, and one of the reasons why I like reading manga, being so new to it still, is the escapism. You know, I love watching movies, TV shows, playing video games. Those were my escape from the reality I was given. And it wasn't a bad reality, it was just one that I didn't like. It's one that I didn't feel like I fit in. And so I use these things to get away. And we all have our own forms of escapism. You watching this video, in a sense, is you not wanting to deal with what's happening in your life. And Pun Pun is something that you want to use to escape, but it kind of reflects back on you, on what it is that you think you're trying to escape from. While manga can inspire you, force you to go outside of your comfort zone, chase something that you didn't think you want, show you worlds you thought unbelievably unrealistic, worlds you never dreamed of, manga can take you to places only in your dreams. But Inio Asano decides to take you back down to earth while showing you what could be beyond, but saying you'll never probably get there. I don't want to go through the story like I would maybe some other manga. I don't want to go through beat by beat what happens and just tell you what happens. I just want to talk about how it made me feel. It's easy to go through and look at the inspiration, the themes. Pun Pun is one of those stories that is extremely deep where anyone could talk about it, and you could talk about it forever about what this means and what this means and what this means. But I think the whole point is really what it means to you. And that's the source of most good art. But Pun Pun really says to you, what do you think of this, which also asks you, what do you think of you? Punpun reminds me of a story, Evangelion. Evangelion is a really great anime. It's one of my favorite anime. I remember the experience of watching it and just being hooked on like, what is going to happen next. When I got to the final end of Evangelion movie, I was very shocked. Those are the words I guess I'll use. I wasn't mad or angry. I wasn't upset at the cliffhanger of an ending. And mind you, I haven't watched the Amazon movies yet. Don't worry, I will. But I was someone who was very much deflated by what I had seen. It was a lot to take in, and I thought about it for weeks. Recording this video, I tried recording it once and I feel like I didn't encapsulate what I was trying to say because it's so hard to, especially with a story that is trying to reflect the human condition but not telling you how to feel about it. Punpun has this reputation of being one of those stories that when you read it, you're going to cry. You're going to cry and you're going to cry and you're going to have such huge amounts of emotion. It's the Notebook of manga. It's one of those stories that hits hard and doesn't pull any punches. Now, I'm not someone, I will say, and I'm sure people will call me a liar, I didn't cry when I finished Punpun. I didn't weep. I didn't clutch the manga on my chest and cry. I kind of just sat there and I was just trying to think about all of it. I just read the life of someone and now I have to encapsulate what that means to me. The story kind of almost ends around a certain age that I think I am. So what does that mean to me? The story ends around my age. Where am I right now versus him? How did we grow up different? Punpun really wants you to apply yourself to the main character and understand what would you do in his circumstances, and never really say to you about whether or not what it is that happens to him or that he does is something that you should like him for or not. Punpun is a very human character. He does things that are very honorable. He has inner conflicts in many different ways about himself. He's unsure about some things that happen to him. He's very scared of things that happen to him. He's very annoyed by things that happen to him. He's very happy about some things that happen to him. And he makes choices that almost reflect a human who has every single kind of problem with connection and interacting with humans. Punpun has depression and anxiety, and he constantly overthinks a lot of things that happen to him. There were moments where I'm reading, I'm saying to Punpun, like, dude, like, you can do this, you can get through this. I hope this succeeds. I hope nothing like this happens to you again, because so much happens to him that is so much out of his control. And there's so much that happens to him that he doesn't understand because he's too young. But then when he gets older and some of those things that happen to him may or may not have caused him to make choices that he does, there's a lot that Punpun does that I can't agree with and I don't sympathize him for. It's like seeing someone grow up and see bad things happen, and then you see them do something later in life that you don't want them to do. But I can't sympathize because I can't judge that he had done that. He makes choices that are very shallow. He makes selfish choices and he makes honorable choices. He is an extremely human character because he makes such contradictive choices as a human being. And we, as someone who see him drawn in not just a bird, but different ways, can see that this is what kind of persona he is emulating, whether it's the bird, the triangle, so many different versions of himself that we can look at and understand this is the worst side of him. This is the best side of him. There is a lot of things about Punpun that I dislike, and there are a lot of things about him that I sympathize with. And it's hard for me to judge him sometimes because it's almost like, am I any better than him? You're watching this video, you've probably made some choices you regret. And you probably have some social situations you wish you could have handled better. But similar to Punpun, we don't always make the right one. We always, in hindsight, see things that we wish we knew. One of the things I remember the most, and I think it really adds to the whole discussion of people who are old and young, is when he sees a group of elementary school kids walking in the rain and they're so happy and have these dreams and are full of life, and he is almost very mad and annoyed that he wishes he could be that ignorant again of not knowing the horror of being an adult and growing up and remembering his dream of having Planet Punpun and getting in a rocket and discovering it and saving the world. And it's something that I think really, really, really does emphasize that feeling when you get older, is that there was no rose-colored event that would happen and change your life for the better, and it would just happen. You either chase it yourself or you just don't get it, or it doesn't arrive for you. Maybe it just doesn't happen at all. You chase it and you don't get it anyway. And it's not just Punpun. Every character has something that troubles them. Many characters face body image issues, physical abuse, emotional abuse, trauma, forgotten trauma, distant families, absent parents, and family death. Like, there is so much here that I can relate a lot to, and some that I just understand because I know people who have gone through it. And every character embodies a certain part of human aspect, whether it's the extremely weird with the Pegasus cult, or it's the extremely dark and human of the interaction between Punpun and Sachi, or Punpun and Aiko. There are relationships in this that I look at and I really understand, and some of the things I really didn't understand when I first read, but after thinking about more, I get it. One of the things I really was confused about was the relationships of adults and how they interact with children. There are so many adults who seem so just disingenuous and disgusting, and then there are some adults that seem almost psychotic. When Punpun's in elementary school, there are adults who are acting like giant psychopathic children. And I think it was meant to say that as you get older, you start to realize that adults will make choices that you don't understand, but when you get older, you understand them more. And I did. There were characters who were adults who I had no idea what they were doing or why they were doing it. And suddenly they would do something and I would understand exactly what they were trying to do, or I understood more of what it is that they wanted. One of my favorite characters was Sachi. I really did, in many ways, kind of relate to her ambition. There was something that I really liked, and in a lot of ways, it was hard for me to say that I didn't understand a lot of her way of thinking and agreed with it. You know, she was being tied down by Pun. She succeeded more without him, which was something that I thought was rough, but at the same time, I envy that kind of success that she had in her field. That's what I think Punpun does really well. It really shows you characters that you can relate to or see pieces of yourself in, or other parts of yourself, or sides of yourself you hate being shown as if they were to get control of you, or choices that you would make and seeing the result of them. Seeing that there was no right choice for a lot of characters, but there was a very human choice and a very inhuman choice for a lot of them. I think the manga as it went on was great regardless. I would always recommend someone to read something like this. Did I love it? I don't know. It's hard to describe if I loved Punpun. I would say it's something everyone should read, but I wouldn't say it's something that I loved. I don't regret reading it. I really don't. But did I love it? I just sit here and I think about it. Loving is put into hard words. The things I love and want to play and watch and read, I'll do whenever I want. Do I want to read Punpun again? Maybe one day, but not anytime soon. I don't think that's something that is like fun for me. One of my favorite scenes, if I had to kind of encapsulate what I thought was great about Punpun in at least a lot of the early stages of Punpun's life, was the idea of putting on a persona of being happy around people. And you know that every single character would be happier if they just let the barrier down and be themselves. And seeing this persona of yourself, because I think we all have this idea of what we think we look like, what we should look like, and then what everyone else sees of us. I really enjoyed the interaction of Punpun when he's an adult and meeting Sachi, because she's someone who kind of comes out of nowhere. And while his relationship with Aiko is very much a very childish one and something that I think was so flawed, I think a lot of people felt very sympathetic to Aiko, and I did as well. But it was something that I really thought that was never going to work regardless. There was so much that was wrong with this relationship, and not just his, a lot of people's. I think one other scene that really stuck with me, that made me think a lot about who I am, myself, and again, maybe this will help urge you to go read it. I've given a couple spoilers in this video, but I want to give one more, and if you don't want to know it, then just go read it. But one scene that I felt was very interesting that hit a lot home for me was when Punpun was learning that his mother was dying and she's on her deathbed. She has cancer. As someone who lost a family member like that, and seeing two characters who couldn't really love each other, and in the end, after one of them passing away, couldn't even say that they did love them because they just couldn't connect, was something that I felt very shocked by. As someone who lost someone so close to me, I thought, how could you not? But then I don't have the circumstances that Punpun had, and I imagine a lot of people probably do. So I couldn't judge that. I shouldn't have, because He was someone who didn't love his mother. They didn't have a good relationship. Of course he doesn't. How can he lie and say, yeah, I loved her, when in reality they didn't know each other? Her on her deathbed almost lying to herself that she does, regardless of maybe whether or not it was true. I don't know. Maybe that's something that people debate to this day. But in that point in the story, it really made me understand a whole lot more about how every character interacts and has very human emotions about being apathetic, rarely being empathetic, trying to just understand the human that's standing in front of them, because it feels like, and I think it's the way Inio Asano is written, it feels like every time someone talks, you're really worried about what it is that they're going to say. And that's something that is anxiety on a whole nother level. Last thing I'll say is, in terms of the art, it's awesome. I did look up a lot of things about how he used digital art to create the photogenic kind of backgrounds and panels, and I think they were great. They were really awesome. I think the artwork is great in showing realistic stuff, but then also showing the really unnatural, the space, the things inside Punpun's mind, whether it be comedic of, you know, your first time wanking it, or the really fucked up moments of lust over love or murder, all these different things that feel almost unique. It's hard to place this manga in its own kind of genre. It's drama, it's psychological, it's philosophical, it's a coming of age. It's a lot of things packed into one. Somewhat even it's the most realistic slice of life you'll ever find, but also the most unrealistic at the same time. Yeah, it's hard. This could be the most rambling video I've ever made, but it's hard to really try and encapsulate it and give an honest opinion of how I felt about this entire story and manga without it just being something of me just talking about these different elements, these themes, you know? I do think if you want the human nature in a very raw, unfiltered way in a manga, this is probably the closest you'll get. You know, the manga I read have human, realistic characters, but this is humanity, the humanity we see in front of us, you know, the people outside on streets, everyday people we come across. This is all of them packed into one. You have people who have questionable morals, questionable mentalities, questionable health issues, all of it just really packed into a story, and all of them interweaving and slowly kind of affecting each other. That makes you feel like life is a small world, but at the same time, it's a big, complicated one that has no real answer. But at the same time, finding that answer can be really great, and hopefully you find it and you don't end up alone. But yeah, that's what I thought. All in all, I think it's a great manga. The way it's structured is awesome. It's a great read, but I can't even rate it. I don't even know how to rate it. It's something. It's something. All I know is Sachi was my favorite character. She was the one I was like, Sachi and Seki were my favorite characters. That's all I know. I do think it's great to talk about in a group of people how you felt about this manga, honestly, because you could say how much you really feel sorry for Punpun, and someone else could say how much they feel like they despise him. And man, if that doesn't speak humanity, then I don't know what else does. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching to the end. I appreciate it. If you want to see more of this, please subscribe, like, really appreciate it. It helps me out. And you know what? Inio Asano is definitely going to be on the TBR for a few more, because I'd love to see what else that he has in store for us and also what he has done. So if you're an Inio Asano fan, you've read Punpun, please tell me what you think below. Tell me what you think is the next best read I should do for Inio Asano, because I know there's a lot, and a lot of people probably have a lot of opinions about him. And again, tell me what you thought of Punpun in the comments. I'd like to read it. And no, that's all from me, guys. I appreciate it if you watch it to the end. My name's Mugen. As always, have a good one.